Yesterday, we thought together for a few minutes about the origin of suffering within the mystery of iniquity. Today, we will reflect upon how there is hope even in the midst of suffering. Because of his extravagant and boundless love for them, God was not willing to forsake his creation to suffer the destructive effects of their sinful disobedience forever. Nor was he willing to leave them after the fall without hope for a remedy. Immediately after their fall from original grace, God pronounces a condemnation upon the serpent, that is, the devil, and his beguiling actions. And he does this in a message that the church calls the proto-evangelium, which means the first gospel, or first good news, proclaiming the hope of redemption. In the book of Genesis we read, "The Lord God said to the serpent, 'Because you have done this, cursed are you above all cattle and above all wild animals. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.'" This is the way that the Revised Standard Version Catholic edition renders that passage. But the Douay-Rheims Bible renders Genesis 3:15 this way: "She shall crush thy head, and thou shalt lie in wait for her heel." This is the source of the many works of Catholic art that depict the Blessed Virgin Mary trotting upon the head of the serpent. In this passage from the book of Genesis, the Church recognizes a prophecy that foretells the coming of a divine Messiah, a God-man descended from Eve and born of a woman, who will redeem humankind from their bondage to sin, death, and the devil. This Messiah will ultimately bring about a decisive victory over evil, restoring humanity to the former state of holiness, justice, and intimacy with God that Adam and Eve originally enjoyed. In this sense, the Messiah will be understood as the new Adam, who will ultimately erase the consequences of the first Adam's fall. Similarly, the woman will be understood as the new Eve, who through her seed will play her own role in crushing the serpent's head. Of course, the Church understands these two figures to have been fulfilled in the persons of Jesus Christ and his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. The Catechism teaches us that the new Adam, because he became obedient unto death, even death on a cross, makes amends superabundantly for the disobedience of the first Adam. Furthermore, many fathers and doctors of the Church have seen the woman announced in the Proto-Evangelium as Mary, the mother of Christ, the new Eve. Mary benefited first of all and uniquely from Christ's victory over sin. She was preserved from all stain of original sin, and by a special grace of God committed no sin of any kind during her whole earthly life. Since the fall, the long story of humanity has been tinged throughout its history by untold suffering of every description. Trials and tribulations of all sorts were inevitable because after the fall, humanity retained the ability to choose between right and wrong. Unfortunately, not all decisions were good ones that benefited humanity's well-being. So suffering became an ever-present companion of human existence. Even though suffering may not always appear to have an immediate cause and effect relationship, the fact is that all pain and imperfection can be traced to the brokenness of the human condition and its impact upon the world, which ultimately is a direct result of the fall. Yet from the beginning of fallen human history, God has been active in the midst of all the pain and suffering, working to bring good out of ill. Through his redemptive work, God provides the sure and certain hope that humanity's final condition will not be merely restored to the state of original righteousness in which he first created it, but will be exalted even above its first state. Human beings, adopted by God as his children through the grace of baptism, who persevere through their suffering to the end, are destined in heaven to receive the unfading crown of glory and to share in God's own divine nature. In this way, sanctified human nature will ultimately surpass the original nature of Adam and Eve even before their fall, in a manner of which they could not have even dreamed. In God, no matter what manner of suffering we experience, whether it is physical, psychological, spiritual, or something else, no matter what suffering we experience, there is hope not only for help and healing, but for eternal bliss as well. In this light, perhaps it would not be too much to be grateful even for Adam's fall, that happy fault. Before my ordination to the presbyterate, as a deacon, it was my privilege each year to regularly sing the Exultet at the Easter Vigil. Those ancient words express so well this transcendent joy and our eternal hope. They read, "This is the night when Christ broke the prison bars of death and rose victorious from the underworld. Our birth would have been no gain had we not been redeemed. O wonder of your humble care for us! O love, O charity beyond all telling! To ransom a slave, you gave away your son. O truly necessary sin of Adam, destroyed completely by the death of Christ. O happy fault that earned so great, so glorious a Redeemer." Tomorrow, we will think about the meaning of physical suffering as we continue our meditation on suffering in this series.